Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the 35th Annual California Small Farm Conference. My name is Evan Wigg. I'm with Community Alliance of Family Farmers, and we're excited to have you all here for Branding with Your Values. So if you're here looking for the Branding with Your Values workshop, you are in the right place. We're really excited to have you along. We got some wonderful panelists today. We're going to share their experience and wisdom and tips. But before we dive into that, I just want to encourage folks to use the chat feature. If you have questions, comments, want to share resources, feel free to use that down below. And otherwise, we've got a lot to cover in just 45 minutes, so we're going to pass it along. So thank you so much for our panelists for being here. And why don't you take it away?
Thanks, Evan. I really appreciate being invited to participate. I'm going to start sharing my screen. And hopefully you guys can all see this. And we know that we are at the right conference time. Let's see. Okay, so I am Christine Farren. I'm the Executive Director for Foodwise, and I'm really thrilled that we have wonderful panelist farmers that are participate in our farmers market at the Ferry Building and at Mission Community Market. As Evan mentioned, we really want to hear from you, so please do use the chat function to let us know, where you're coming from today, and then also really tell us in the chat what you're hoping to learn from today's presentation, because after I finish talking, I'm going to be reading that chat and want to make sure that we can circle back to questions. We're definitely leaving time for Q&A at the end of this. My advancing doesn't seem to be going as quickly as there we go. Okay. Our panelists today, we have Amber Balakian. She's a fourth-generation organic farmer. She helps to manage her family farm, Balakian Farms, which is in Reedley, California. She's an entrepreneur who manufactures and distributes value-added products with her family brand. And she's also the entrepreneurship instructor at Fresno City College and oversees the entrepreneurship program within their business division. And then we're also going to hear from Lael Gerhart from Frog Hollow Farm. She leads the brand and engagement at the farm, and she oversees all of the breadth of their communications and storytelling, which I'm really excited for her to share with you guys, really with the focus on deepening the impact of the public's understanding and their connection to the products and the awareness and the impact of everyone's food choices. And she came to Frog Hollow from the Cornell Cooperative Extension, where she developed food access programming and public engagement initiatives around local food systems. Okay, so here we are talking about branding with our values. And I am Christine, as I mentioned earlier, the Executive Director for Foodwise. And we just went through a big rebrand. We used to be called Quesa. We've been operating farmers markets and education programs for 30 years. And we offer a range of programming, both in our farmers markets, typical things like cooking demonstrations, but also thought leadership pieces like panel discussions and leading farm tours. And then we have two signature youth education programs that we were thrilled we were able to keep going even during the pandemic. And our mission and vision is that we are dedicated to growing thriving communities through the power and joy of local food, which I know all of you that are participating in this feel the similar way and are doing the same kinds of work. So we envision a world that nourishes all people, local economies, and the living earth. So who do we serve? Well, primarily we serve the folks that are selling in our farmers markets by running those markets and giving them access to the customer base. And there are over 130 small food businesses and family farms that sell with us. And then there's the thousands of Bay Area residents who shop at our farmers market. And we are especially proud to have really grown the number of shoppers who are using CalFresh, which is EBT usage. About 3,000 students come through our program every year, and the majority of those students are public school students from SFUSD. And then, of course, lots of chefs that shop with us and supply all of their delicious menus from the produce that you guys grow. And then this is our team. And I'm really proud that this is our team because we got really small during the pandemic, and we've been slowly growing back as we have stabilized. And it feels like victory to me that we are 14 full-time staff and about 6 part-time staff that run all of our programs and market operations. So why did we change our name, and what is this about the rebrand that we went through? And it really speaks to the fact that our existing brand as Quesa was very cluttered. You can even see through the years. When we first started our farmers market, it was a line drawing, and then the Ferry Plaza Farmers Market had its own logo that looked like a fruit cart that then we had our name had a clock tower in it. We wanted to take the clock tower out because we didn't want to be known as being synonymous with the ferry building. So then we went to this big block lettering and tried to lock it up. And then it really, ultimately, it kind of came down to the fact that we knew we wanted a different name. The Center for Urban Education about Sustainable Agriculture was 19 syllables and really a difficult acronym to unpack and pronounce. And it didn't forge any emotional connection. So we really went through a long process of knowing we wanted it. We talked about changing our name for years before we finally did it. And then we moved to a name, Foodwise, that was already in our wheelhouse. So we actually did spend time with consultants, workshopping a lot of names. And it was our director of communications, Bree Mazurek, who said, you know, what about the name Foodwise? That's the name that we're already using. It's the name that for our kids programming, Foodwise Kids and Foodwise Teens. And the more we just kind of thought about it, we're like, yeah, this makes sense because it really speaks to the inherent wisdom in the community, and our tagline, education, farmers markets, and community, is there to kind of give people a more literal translation of the work that we do. We also really wanted a logo that was vibrant and colorful and engaging the way the farmers market is. You know, when you walk through the market stands, everything is so colorful and so alive, and we wanted our brand to really communicate that. Visual brands express a lot of vibrancy and joy, and we wanted that. So part of the reason that we changed, Melanie mentioned, is because we had this confusing acronym of a name. But then Foodwise really is rooted in our education programs, and it speaks to, we wanted to shift. And I think this is one of the biggest things about this panel discussion is we felt like our existing brand didn't really reflect what we were doing, and we were moving in a different direction as an organization anyway. We were prioritizing racial equity within our work much more strongly. We were focusing on people and less on land and less on like agricultural systems and more about community and people. So even choosing to highlight faces in our imagery a lot more than pictures of landscapes. These were all shifts that we were making as an organization, and it really became important to us to change our name to reflect that. Our values, community, equity, stewardship, and joy. I'm not going to read through those. Those are all on our website, but we wanted a brand that really reflected those values, and we spent a lot of time trying to think about those values. So when we were Quesa, the focus was on ag. We were the nonprofit that runs the farmers market. We reviewed, and still are, honestly, as an expensive elite farmers market. And it was that Quesa is the expert teaching you, the unknowledgeable. And it was very precious and foodie and kind of preaching to the choir. And in shifting to Foodwise, it was very much an intentional decision that equity, diversity, and inclusion are as essential, and they are the foundation for sustainability. And that we wanted to try to really merge our education programs and farmers markets more together in the new brand, deepening our investment in food access. As I mentioned earlier, that was a hugely important move for us. And then not that education comes from the outside, but that wisdom is in the community. And so a lot of that even speaks to, you know, when we have our cooking demonstrations, yes, we have Michelin-starred, James Beard award-winning chefs come and do that, but we just as often are prioritizing home cooks, grandmothers, you know, people with non-professional paid skilled work that have just as much expertise and knowledge to share. So the name really was also reflected in some shifts in our programming. And then we wanted something that was down to earth and fun and accessible and just a lot more vibrant. And this is our brand in the wild, the big sign in the Mission Community Market in 2 languages, and then on t-shirts and banners, and then online, which also was a big part of our rebrand. Bold, colorful, and really highlighting the people behind all of the work. So we did engage a lot of stakeholders in the process, and we have a lot of stakeholders, and you probably do too. And I think it's important to think about, if you are thinking not necessarily about changing your name, but about changing the look or your brand in some way, who are you beholden to? And so for us, it was our staff, our board, our market sellers, the people who participate in our programs, our donors as a nonprofit. And so we actually canvassed a lot of them. And this image on the right just shows you all of these qualities that we thought we had, and then the ones that rose to the top when we really had to select some that we were going to focus on. It can feel like navel gazing, but it's not. It's actually that discovery process is really important. if you are considering making some significant changes. And so it is important to make time to listen and to gather that feedback and insights. And also to remember that you know your brand best. There are wonderful tools out there to help you if you aren't sure where to go. And we will be sharing the slides afterwards, and we will be putting these links in the chat. If you're, like, what does my brand stand for? Maybe your family story. Well, we've been farming this piece of land forever, and we grow these types of crops. But what is our actual brand archetype? Well, this is one quiz you can take and tool that you can use. And we used it, and actually we had consultants that first described us as more on the side. I'm sorry, I can't. Let's see. I just have to move where everyone else. More on the explorer side under this top right, freedom. And we didn't like the explorer term. We felt like it was really colonial, and actually wasn't really what we were. And the more we did work sort of separate from working with consultants, we kind of landed on the caregiver service part and on the lover, connecting with others. Like, we really felt like that more adequately expressed how we were showing up in the world and who we wanted to be. So as you are talking about your values and branding, talking about your values in your branding, I love when farms actually draw connections to the impact of someone's purchasing or the impact of that particular farm. So your food dollar here supports 18 families. This picture is from Eat Well Farms. The things that we encourage you to think about are, who are the people supporting you? What values matter to you, and what values matter to your customers? What's your promise? So and you'll hear more from the farms after I'm done about what their sort of promise to their community is and what they're hoping customers keep coming back to them for. And then you do think about what sets you apart from the competition, so to speak, or what just makes you unique. It's not even necessarily competition, but what makes you special? And there are many things that make your farm special. And what's your vision? When you think about communicating your values, we really encourage you to use words that evoke people and practices and places. So if you are third generation, first generation, Black owned, women owned, immigrant owned, talking about the people behind it. If you have practices that you want to highlight, whether you're certified organic or regenerative, or things are made by hand, or it's a family recipe. These are all things that you can call out, and not just in your labels. I mean, with the images here are labels, but these are things you can be using to talk about in your social media, in your newsletters and blog posts. And then I also love naming the place. What county are you from? What's the agricultural and cultural legacy or land acknowledgements that you can include with some of your branding and communications? So before you start a brand refresh, yes, it can be very costly in time and energy to change your name and logo. Not everyone who's coming to this panel is probably at all thinking of changing your name. We needed to, but maybe you're thinking about changing a particular direction, or you're really wanting to highlight something. And it's good to understand what your goals are before you go through that process. So are you trying to grow your customer base, or connect with your customers more deeply, or have your customers see the full breadth of the work you're doing and not just see you, the farmer, but understand your farm worker team or the challenges you're having as you're navigating climate change on your farm? So what stories are, what are your end goals and the stories you're trying to tell? And then also, is there any news that you can tie into this? If there is a new product that you're coming out with, or a new certification, highlight it a lot. Just because you talked about it once doesn't mean that people saw that post. I think about Old Dog Ranch. They were first regenerative organic certification walnut farm, and they did a great job of calling out other people on this blog post who are also certified regenerative organic, and they in calling out other companies, those companies can then reshare those posts, and they talk about it pretty regularly, because one social media post won't really explain the depth of what that change means for them and their farming practices. And other practical tips, personal storytelling is really compelling. So we have this Urena Farms, their farm to fridge. This is a photo of their family. So share what you love, and other people will connect to that. Showcase your workers, not just yourselves or not just your products. Really talk about the people, because people respond to people and a sense of place. And then achievable goals are important. So start really small. Think about the one thing you can do this week that you want to try after you've heard from all of us, and just start small. There are some other tips that you're going to get in the next panels, but thank you. I hope you guys do stay in touch. These are all the ways to keep connected to Foodwise. And then you'll hear from, we'll start the chat in a couple of minutes. I will start after we're done. I'm going to stop sharing and pass it over. Amber, do you feel like we're ready?
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you, Christine.
Mhm.
Go ahead and share my screen. Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Amber Balakian. I'm from Balakian Farms. So today I'm going to talk about our farm's branding journey and then some of the tools and strategies that we've used for our branding. So just to give a little bit of background, Balakian Farms was started when my great-grandfather immigrated from Armenia during the Armenian genocide. And his son, John Balakian, continued farming. And in the early 1990s, my mother, Ginger, transitioned our farm to be certified organic. And that's when we also began growing specialty crops like heirloom tomatoes. So we grow different types of row crops and tree fruit. And like I said, we also grow different specialty varieties. So we sell a lot to farmers markets, restaurants in the Bay Area. And then our team is made up of my family. So my grandmother, Stella, mother, Ginger, myself, my father, Clarence, and then some of our employees, Angel, Benny. They've been with our farm for over 20 years. So they're practically part of our family. And we like to really highlight their stories in our branding as well. So when I came back from college, I started producing value-added products with the produce that we grow. And one of the key taglines for our farm is to honor the past and celebrate the future. I think that's a good representation of our brand and our farm and our story. And so we use this tagline in a lot of our graphics and highlight that on our website and social media. So our story is really something that we use in our branding, and our customers really like that a lot. So some of our value-added products, we make organic blended heirloom tomatoes, and we also make, we just launched this organic bread and butter pickle. And then this year, we're launching Stella Natural Skincare using produce that we grow in some skincare that we're going to sell. And then these are our core values. So we have 3 of them: tradition, values, and innovation. One thing that we like to do is use icons to also illustrate our core values. And then on our website, we go into more detail. I'm not going to read through this, but it just more so illustrates some of what our core values represent. So one thing that some tips when trying to assess what your core values are, I suggest choosing between 3 to 4 core values and making sure that those are directly tied to your value proposition. Like Christine mentioned, making sure that you have something that differentiates you from other farms and figuring out what that is. And then also looking at, are my core values product focus or people focus? So for us, we have a combination, but it's important to know, where those core values fall. And then does it pass these 2 tests? So when money's tight, or when there's a lot of stress in your business, do those core values still stand? So they really shouldn't be things that are aspirational, and they're not necessarily equally weighted. And then just kind of a fun exercise, if you're still struggling to figure out your core values, is this tombstone exercise. So if your farm were to go away completely, what are 3 things that your customers would miss the most? Those are probably going to be your core values. So certification is also a big part of our brand. Like I mentioned, we're certified organic. We also are certified women-owned, minority-owned certified. And then we are part of the Stacy's Rise project. So we like to really highlight this on our website and through our branding, and our customers really appreciate that. So in 2020, we also went through a big rebrand. I had received a grant through the USDA, the Value Added Producer Grant, and part of that grant was to do a rebrand. So we did use a branding agency. Cost wise, it was pricey. It was in like the $10,000 range, but you can still do a rebrand and do it relatively inexpensively. But I just want to walk you through that process if you are thinking of doing any type of branding. So something they should give you is one second. Okay, something they should give you is options. So we were given 2 different options. And so we had Territory 1, which was more heritage. So this was one of the looks, which was farm to table. And then Territory 2 was a little more bright, vibrant, kind of funky, but still traditional. And we felt that this best represented our brand. So we selected this, that roadmap. And then another thing you want to make sure that you ask whoever is doing your branding is for brand guidelines. So some of the things that fall under your brand guidelines should be logos, typography, color, graphic style, guardrails, and then brand world, which are like your assets. Along with your logo, it's good to have an icon and a monogram so that you could kind of mix it up a little bit. So those are kind of your secondary marks that I would ask for. And then also variations of your logo. So they gave us 3 different variations, and we don't really step outside of what they've given us. So if you get a logo, I would also ask for different variations. And then I'm not a graphics person, so I needed to also know, like, what shouldn't I do? Because otherwise I would probably, do all kinds of things with my logo. So they gave us kind of these guardrails to show us, like, don't do these things, don't use the font in these ways. So that's something else that you should definitely ask for from whoever's doing your branding. And then colors, it's always good to kind of keep it concise. So we have 2 primary colors. We have a green and a yellow. And again, we don't really step outside of these colors for our brand. And then we have secondary colors, which are background colors. So these are the 2 background colors. And then assets, make sure that they provide you with assets so that you could we use our assets in a lot of different ways, especially on social media and our website. So you want to make sure that you get some digital assets. And then in terms of our value added product evolution, you see here, we kind of started with no logo, no label, moved to a label, hang tag, screen print, and then this is our current look. So it's definitely evolved over time. And then another thing, like, we didn't really want to completely scrap our old look. So we just kind of took, like, for our website, our original website, and then refreshed it. And so it's still, and I think our customers really appreciated that we weren't moving too far away from, like, what we originally had for our brand. And then again, we make sure that whatever assets we have, we incorporate that into various parts of, whether it's our signage or apparel. I think that's really important to highlight your brand and kind of keep people talking outside of, the actual produce that you're selling or products. And then we do use a social media management company to help us manage our social media. And they use Airtable. So we use Airtable, but this is a tool that you can use even if you're doing it yourself. If you want to plan out your grid, this is like a very inexpensive, easy tool to use. So I highly recommend using Airtable. And then as you see, like, we have our grid very mapped out. So we have a pattern that we follow, whether it's graphics or product photos, we keep within that pattern for our Instagram. And then any posts, like, we had made this like mini video and it did really well. We had a lot of views, a lot of comments, a lot of engagement. So we make sure that we pin those best performing, whether it's videos or posts, on our social media. And I will say too that we do boost our posts, and surprisingly, even if you're spending like $100 a month, that really helps grow your following and engagement. So you don't have to spend a lot on marketing to really reap some of the benefits. And then I'm all about like, how can I save money on marketing? So this is another tool that we really like to use, and we've gotten a lot of good feedback from our customers, is really highlighting our family history, our family story, because that's something that you can do, you know, for not for free, but I mean, it's very inexpensive. So on our website, we have our history timeline, and we just use old photos that are like archival footage. And actually just looking at the analytics on our Instagram, our old archival footage photos far outperform any of the other posts. So if you have photos, you know, make sure that you use them, because people want to hear your story. I think that's an important part of your brand. And then lastly, these are some resources. I know you're going to get a copy of the slides, but definitely these are resources that you can use. Fiverr is probably the best if you're looking at finding people to do a rebrand. And then there's some other resources here if you want to get funding or do any type of marketing. So thank you for listening to me today, and I hope you got something out of that.
Thanks, Amber. That was great. All right, on to you,
Okay,
Lael.
let me share my screen here.
And I'm not seeing too many questions yet in the Q&A, or I mean in the chat. So please do let us know if things are coming up for you or you want us to revisit anything before we get to the end.
Great. Okay. All righty. Everybody see everything okay?
Yeah, looks great.
Perfect. All right. Well, my name's Lael Gerhart, and I work with Frog Hollow Farm. I'll just introduce myself super briefly. So I wear several hats at the farm. I oversee our 1,500 member CSA program, and I work on brand engagement and marketing initiatives. So today I'm really going to be focusing on how we communicate our values throughout all different channels within our farm communication systems. So for a little background, Frog Hollow, we're a 280-acre organic and regenerative orchard in Brentwood, California. We're about an hour east of San Francisco. And Frog Hollow was founded by Al Corshane, also lovingly known as Farmer Al. He planted his first peach trees on 13 acres in 1976. And he started out as a conventional farmer, but he became really disillusioned with a chemically intensive production system, so he transitioned Frog Hollow to organic production in 1989. And since then, everything has really expanded. Today, we grow a diversity of stone fruit we're most known for. We grow peaches, apricots, nectarines, plums, pluots, cherries, as well as olives, persimmons, pomegranates, mulberries, pears, almonds, and a small amount of citrus. So we grow primarily, almost exclusively, tree fruit. We have 70 year-round employees, from our office to our orchard to our packing team and in our farm kitchen. And as I mentioned, we have a farm kitchen. So in addition to the orchard, the on-site farm kitchen was established by Chef Becky Corshane, Al's wife, in '94. And we have a really strong commitment to mitigating food waste in our farm. And so the farm kitchen is a huge component of how we end up optimizing our harvest to find the best use for all the fruits we grow. And Becky and our super awesome kitchen team work really hard to transform our overripe or cosmetically damaged fruit to make a diversity of specialty value-added products like our fruit conserves, dried fruit, and pastry. So over the years, we've developed several different market channels, which include wholesale, so specialty retailers, restaurants, and distributors. Again, our community-supported agriculture program. We attend several markets throughout the SF Bay Area, and we have a nationwide mail order program that is via our website, froghollow.com. So Al established our core brand elements and our value proposition in around 1990 after he made the transition to organic. So our logo and our tagline, legendary fruit organically grown, is displayed in all of our fresh fruit packaging, and we incorporate this and throughout our communications. So he used legendary to really identify our fruit as something singularly delicious that people will remember and talk about, and as something that's magical. And the organic, because he really immediately wanted to connect our commitment to land stewardship. So he also wanted to really establish our connection to nature as an organic farm and all we do as far as ecosystem services. It's really an important part of what we do and how we differentiate ourselves. So our fruit box is a whimsical storybook image that harkens back to a time when we were more connected to nature and the land. And along with our logo, brings in a magical element to our brand identity. So we strive to weave these value propositions into all of our marketing communication channels. So some of our values, first and foremost, is to produce legendary fruit that's like full of flavor and nuance and identity. And we also want to talk about how we achieve this exceptional quality, because we don't feel like our production systems can be disincorporated from how the fruit tastes so good. So, and our production systems is sort of part and parcel to what we do and our values, as well as the commitment to our team who makes everything run. So we have a strong commitment to building soil health. Al started making compost 14 years ago. Today we make over 5,000 tons of compost every year on the farm. So that's a really big deal. We have 6 acres devoted to compost production, and we're very much committed to soil health. And we really seek to foster biodiversity on our farm to create a vibrant ecosystem where beneficial insects and predators and pollinators all have a place to live and thrive. And so we do this through extensive cover crops and habitat plantings. And we really want to recognize that each of our team members contributes really valuable skills in growing the food and making our business run. We're a farm of people, right? Everything we do wouldn't happen without the people who do it. And we recognize that farming and running a business is hard work, as I'm sure you do. So we're very fortunate to have monthly wellness sessions for all of our team members, primarily in Spanish, where we practice relaxation techniques, stretch, and meditate. So caring for our team is a really big part of our values as well. And we want our community to know that how we approach growing food really impacts our environment, it impacts our team, and that these things in turn really inform that legendary flavor and the quality characteristics of the products that we're so known for. So we communicate our values across a diversity of platforms. Of course, our website. We have our value propositions displayed up front and in short and clear headline copy. We consistently refer to our fruit as legendary to reinforce that brand promise of high quality and unique flavor. We have our trees, from our trees to your table, to emphasize the fact that the food comes directly from our orchard and that it's fresh and high quality. We grow food that's good for you and the planet to really, again, reinforce that connection to our regenerative organic farming systems. So on average, about 5 times as many people will read a headline as any body copy. So we make sure to use these to be sure we're getting our point across really quickly and succinctly. And then hopefully your headline is interesting enough that people want to read a little more. So we do incorporate some, short body copy here that explains what the headline's all about. And then for people who really want to learn more and do a deeper dive, we do have a section which is pretty new for us where we've outlined sort of what our farming principles mean. And so we really want to be seen as both advocates and leaders in creating a vibrant, resilient, and regenerative food system. So though we've been farming organically for over 30 years and making compost for about 15, we didn't really have a section on our site that articulated any of these things or outline them as they relate to our stewardship or our team commitment. And we didn't really feel like we had the terminology that expressed or encompassed all we do. So we used to say we were beyond organic, and recently a term has emerged in the food space that we think better encompasses everything we do, and that's regenerative agriculture. So we've been weaving that terminology throughout our communications for about the last 2 years. So in 2021, we sought to identify what regenerative agriculture meant to us in the context of our farm, so we could better communicate these things to our audience. And so we defined those as soil care and biodiversity, and water as a precious resource, as well as human health and wellness, with an emphasis on caring for our team. So we end up talking about all of these things a lot, and though it can feel kind of redundant to talk about the same thing over and over again, repetition really ends up being key in building brand awareness, because as Christine said, not everybody's going to catch every single communication you make, and repeating it really ingrains it into people's understanding of who you are. So in February, you'll see on our Instagram, we talked about soil or compost 4 times in 10 days on our Instagram account. And we didn't use the same narrative for every post. We took a different tack, but those things are continually communicated to reinforce that value within our farm system. So we had a shout out to Al's new favorite book, What Your Food Ate. We built out a compost heart for Valentine's Day. It was recently Random Acts of Kindness Day. So we did a giveaway for people who are correctly answering how many tons of compost we apply per acre. And we talked about soil in the context to our real organic certification, which we've had for about 2 years. So that may seem like a lot, but we do look at metrics that are embedded into Instagram, and we do receive a consistently high engagement level from these posts. So we know people are interested in what we're doing, that our work is resonating with them, and that we're building brand loyalty. We also write a blog where we talk about these principles as they relate to what's happening on the farm seasonally. So here's an example of when we wrote in December when we were planting cover crops. And we really try to utilize the content we create for blogs in as many areas as possible. So we're maximizing the value of that content and saving ourselves time and resources, which, as you probably know, are limited. And every blog we write ends up in our CSA newsletter in a section called the Farm Focus. And we know our members love our newsletter because we hear from them, they email in questions and comments, and we're able to monitor engagement through analytics. So our newsletter averages a 75% open rate, and the average open rate in the agricultural sector is 25 to 28%. So we know we're connecting with our people, that they're interested in what we're talking about. Our blog content also we recycle to feed our social media feed. So we take excerpts from all of the blogs that we write and post those to socials. And then we try to stretch one blog post into multiple posts if we can on our socials. So here we use this section, a different section of the blog article that I just referenced to craft the copy for this update on cover crops and how they were doing. And we actually have 2 more social media posts that are going to utilize that original blog content. And we use socials a lot to communicate our commitment to our team and to make space to honor the contributions of everybody who make up our family. We love everything we do, and we're super committed to all of our production practices, but of course we're all people and we want everyone to know who we are and who makes up all of the work that we do on the farm. So we do a number of short story highlights of our team members. This is the one of Carlos. He works on our farm kitchen. And we've developed a loose template for these so that it's pretty efficient and easy to go through them, and they're sort of a standardized format. We typically share who the team member is and their role, the traits and contributions they bring. Sometimes these are expressed as a quote from one of the owners, and that's super nice. And then we always highlight their favorite food from the farm, whether that's a fruit or a kitchen product or both. And we do use our values throughout our mail order channel as well. For that channel, we send out multiple very product-focused email campaigns a week. So here's an example of an almond campaign we sent where we call out the cover crops and habitats plantings we did for bees and other beneficials in our almond orchard. And we again touch on soil health and the water holding capacity of healthy soil. And for our e-commerce, right now we're working on a big revamp of our product pages. So our current product pages highlight the flavor characteristics of our products, which is of course essential, but they don't really incorporate any of our other values. So we're incorporating visual icons to quickly communicate our commitment to quality, as well as the other values around soil, biodiversity, and water. And for people who want to learn more about these topics, we'll have a drop down for a food to feel good about section where they can learn more. So ultimately, we're seeking to continually communicate our values in order to speak to an audience who cares about them and to create brand loyalty, as well as to differentiate ourselves by how we produce our food and how we care for our team to hopefully drive sales. And since we have multiple communications going out on a weekly basis across different market channels, we use a content calendar to plan We created ours just in Google Sheets, and we set a cadence for blogs and marketing emails and socials, and we just strive to meet it. So we typically sketch out about 2 weeks of content in advance, and we fill in and switch up as necessary. It's really great because it helps you plan ahead for farm rhythms and seasonality, activities you want to share. It helps us map out content to be sure we're maximizing everything we're created. It's great for planning for photos that we know we want to accompany our blogs and socials. And it gives us ideas for content based on calendar hooks. For example, March 3rd is National Wildlife Day, so we're planning a feature on beneficial insects and other wildlife to tie into our biodiversity value. And some of the tech tools we use at the farm are Klaviyo and MailChimp. Those are great for email marketing. We also use Canva, which for people who are not super savvy on graphics is really helpful, and also for photo formatting. And then Shopify is the platform that we use for our website and e-commerce. And just a couple of quick tips and takeaways. You're an expert in what you do. Share what you love about your farm and farming, and don't be afraid to be a star in your own movie. People are going to be interested in you and what you do. It's okay to talk about the same thing over and over again. Just find creative ways to do so and utilize the seasonal nature of farming to help. Stretch your creative assets, whether that's images or copy throughout your communications. Consider using a content calendar and setting a communication cadence that will work for you. Definitely utilize calendar hooks for inspiration, like World Soil Day, International Women's Day. If you can, create and organize a photo library so you quickly have access to images you may need. And it's great to use the built-in analytics to tech tools that you may use. And it's a lot of work to do all of this stuff. So you could rely on your audience for people that are in your community, CSA members, farmers market regulars, people on your social media. These are all folks who are going to want to help you. And that's it for me. Thank you. Stay in touch. We hope that you enjoyed this, and we'll look forward to any questions.
We do have one question. Can you share your content calendar template or where you got one? There were a few other questions. Please keep chatting them. I've been answering a few things. Lael, I'll let you answer that one if you know.
Sure. I don't think we use a template. We just use Google Sheets to create it. And yes, I'm happy to share like a blank copy of it. Absolutely. If you want to let me know to whom to share that. It's just a Google Sheet.
Amber, one of the first questions that came in was from what your experience was like working with the grant, the VAPG grant, and how much did you apply for and how did you use the funds?
So I actually applied for it twice. So the first was in 2020, and it was for $250,000, and then the second was for last year, and that was for $50,000. I will say it is not an easy process. A lot of people do use a grant writer for those, but because I work at the school and have experience with grants, I attempted it, on my own. But it is something that's doable. It just takes a lot of time. And my suggestion, I could also put my email if you have any questions. I'd be happy to help if you're interested in that. But I really used the people that were in charge of the grant for California, because there's two people that are typically in charge of monitoring the grant, and they really walked me through that whole process of how to apply, all the documentation. So it's intimidating, but it's doable. So that's kind of been, and after I did it the first time, I thought, okay, I have like a template. And so I applied again and was able to get the $50,000 this past year. So
that's great. And our organization applied for a grant and was rejected like 5 times and we just kept at it. And so yeah. I would just say, it's a lot of work. Right. And I also want to, we can go a couple extra minutes. So for anyone who wants to still stay on for the Q&A, we're supposed to end at 12:30, but Evan let us know that we could stay for up until 12:40. So I'm just going to keep answering some of these things that are coming in on the Q&A. But I did want to not gloss over. I really want to come back to the point of finding people in your community that you can ask to help you. You would be surprised at the amateur but decent photographers that are shoppers at your farm. And if you can get a bank of photographs of each season of things in bloom and being harvested, you can keep going back to those photos. And it's sort of like you do the hard work now for the reward later, which farmers are very familiar with that concept, with this idea of tagging your images or keeping all tree photos or all spring photos, and that you can keep coming back to those. Okay, so
Can I add something?
Yeah, absolutely.
One thing too that we do is we because we're near Fresno State, and so if you're near a college too, you can get students that are willing to intern and take photos for either free just for the experience or relatively inexpensive photo and video. And so we utilize like Fresno State, Fresno City. So that's like another resource that you can use if you're located near a college or community college.
Great. That's a great recommendation. Lots of folks are asking for the calendar template. We're going to send out to everyone who registered for this, both the quizzes that you can take and some of the recommendations in the slides. So everyone will receive those because I know it's really helpful, and there were a lot of shout outs for everybody's presentation, and especially for the fact that you do need a content calendar. It's a really important thing, because it's how people, especially younger people, will understand your brand first through their phones. They're going to understand who you are through scrolling on Instagram and TikTok and everything else, as well as you having well-trained people that you're selling your produce to either at a farmer's market or wholesale. One of the other questions that came through, what grant did you receive? Can you, Amber, that was the name of the grant again?
Yeah, so it was a value added producer grant, and that is through the USDA. I've gotten other grants, and so on my last slide, I did put like Hello Alice, I Fund Women, SBA. Those are other organizations I've gotten like smaller grants through. So.
Great. One of the other questions was about how you communicate new branding with your coworkers or your staff, so that they're then adequately talking, have the sort of, people have the similar talking points. And it's also like change management. So it was actually my colleague Bree, who's our director of communications, that really led the process for Foodwise. And there were lots of conversations. There were lots of really reviewing as a team our values and why we picked some over the other. And as that slide that I had, that who we were as Quesa and who we wanted to be as Foodwise, that one I kept coming back to over and over again. I used it in board presentations, and we actually had all of our volunteers see our brand the week before it went public, because they're such an important constituent for us. And we didn't want people to feel a sense of loss about changing the name from Quesa to Foodwise. And I think it's similarly, you might think people are attached to a certain logo or look, or they've always known you as something, and are they going to move along with you in this journey? And I think there are really very specific ways that you can express why you're making these changes, and what the new brand means to you, and what you hope it will mean to them. And you invite that dialogue. And it's because we know that you care about ABC that we're highlighting ABC in our new look, or whatever it is. And I think giving people the explanation and inviting them in to that change is really important, no matter what change you're making for your organization. Let me see if there are any other questions. Well, and have you guys been checking the chat to see if there's anyone else? I don't know that I'm seeing anything. Evan, are you seeing anything? I'm not sure. Evan's from CAFs in the background.
Yeah, there's one in the Q&A as well, just about a light rebranding with choosing colors, typography, brand assets, and words. Curious how you thoughtfully share the new branding. Oh,
I think I might have answered that one a little bit
got that one.
To
okay.
Jeremy. Just, it's a lot of conversations. And even one of the other questions that was asked earlier is, what was the process of coming to a consensus on values for your different organizations? My answer that I put was a lot of conversations, voting with dots, teasing out the nuances of words. Like I said before, we worked with a consultant that said that they felt like we were an explorer archetype because you explore in the farmer's market. And we were like, that's too colonial and that's too passive. And that isn't about like the love and care, which is what we really feel like we're standing for in the world. So we had, we really had to tease it out. Amber, for you guys, was there any kind of internal tension with the family or anything or were you just leading this process and everyone said, okay, great.
No, yeah, there was a lot of, because I feel like people don't really, change is not always like the easiest, especially when it's like a family operation. I can tell you what not to do because I wish we had, we didn't really have like a formal, process or like sit down. And so there was like a lot of resistance and it took a lot of time because we didn't really sit everyone down and say, this is like kind of our new branding and this is where we're going and why. So it wasn't as cohesive. And so there was a lot of resistance. And then, because branding is like very sentimental, especially like I said, with family and people that have been with our farm for a long time. So my suggestion, if I were to go back and do it over again, I would have a more formal process like Christine is talking about. So I did not do that though.
People have a lot of feels and yeah, it's important. Well, I would love to hear from you about like communicating out. Frog Hollow's got a really big team. And sometimes there's the people in the office doing the external communication, but you've got this enormous group that is also equally important in communicating the values. How do you do that? How do you manage that?
Incorporating the voice of our entire team.
Or just how do you communicate brand changes? Like, as you guys have been making this shift.
We do have a big team, but it's pretty small group of people who are in the sort of communication front. So we all sit together in the same small office and are constantly iterating and talking amongst ourselves. And then for sort of more out in the world, like our farmers market team, those folks generally come out annually for a farm tour where we go over all of our different, production practices. So they're aware of, because people do ask questions about our practices at the market a lot, so that they're educated and aware of that, and so that they are more connected to the farm. And then, those things sort of individually get communicated when we have new product rollouts as well to like all of our team members who are people facing. But our actual communications team is pretty small on the farm. So we're all, like I said, talking to each other continually.
That actually ties nicely into one of the questions that came up in the Q&A, which is what's the percentage of revenue that you allocate to marketing? I can answer for Foodwise, and that out of 14 full-time staff, we have 2 full-time staff that are communications, and that's communications for education programs and the farmers market and like creating assets. And so that's 14% of the staff. Amber, what about for you? Do you guys have a hard number that you put towards marketing?
So all of our marketing we do is through grants. So depending on how much grant funding we get for the year, usually that's what I'll use for marketing. So it just varies, but I usually take care of and manage all of the marketing decisions. And so it's a kind of a small percent, and we don't really use our farm revenue for marketing. So I just take my time and seek out different grants for that.
It's a really interesting approach. Lael.
I don't actually know exactly the answer to that question. We have sort of different budgets for different programs, and we all do not just marketing. Folks who are involved in marketing also do fulfillment and program oversight and all of that. So there's probably not a hard and fast number that I could actually give you, but we do have about 3 folks who are working in some capacity in communication and marketing consistently, but that's not all they do.
Yeah, everyone wears many hats.
That's right.
We're used to that. Okay, well, I think on that many hat roundup, Evan, I'm going to pass it back to you.
Well, thank you all so much. This was a really informative panel. And just so thanks so much for your time, and I wish the best to everyone attending today on your marketing and branding journeys for your organization, your farm, your ranch. And we'll be sharing, it sounds like you'll be getting an email with more resources from today's panelists, so keep an eye out for that. Besides that, we hope you enjoy the rest of the conference, and I hope to see you at one of the next workshops. Have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thanks, everybody, so much for spending time listening. I hope it was helpful.